I'm saying this in month 10. I was not thinking it then, but it's almost as if it really took out all the things that, I really needed that were just kind of noise. And now I can focus on here's my purpose. Here is the reality of it. Here's what's important. Here is, you know, here's where you need to generate your energy and just be a lot more simple and positive. It was still difficult though, because, and even still now, I'm realizing I was even speaking with my husband about this recently because I would say I have a grasp of the emotions, but it's still very hard to feel it. And every day that goes by, I feel like it should be a lot further along, but I'm realizing this process takes time and there is no time limit.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 127, and my guest today is Stephanie Flynn. Stephanie remembers exactly when a sudden movement caused a vertebral artery dissection that led to a massive headache and then ischemic stroke. 10 months later, Stephanie is coming to terms with how life is different. Now, just before we get started, if you have ever wondered what I can do to help you with your stroke recovery, you should know that you can get recovery after stroke coaching right from the comfort of your own home. I too am a 3-time stroke survivor and a brain surgery survivor, and I have built for you what I was missing when I was sent home from hospital in the hope that you don't have to do stroke recovery as tough as I did. Support packages give you access to a variety of tools 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that you can work on other areas that are important in stroke recovery that you don't get the chance to at physical therapy or rehabilitation. With tailored support available for less than $8.50 per week, all recovery after stroke support packages bring stroke recovery to you in the comfort of your own home. To try out recovery after stroke support and see if it is right for you, you will get the first 7 days free, as well as a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. As a bonus, you will also get 2 face-to-face Zoom support calls with myself to take your recovery to the next level. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com/support to sign up. It won't cost you anything for the first 7 days, and you will get a full refund if you are not happy after 30 days. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And now it's on with the show. Stephanie Flynn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I like to get in touch with people to come on the podcast to share their story about stroke and about how it's impacted their life. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Sure. Well, a little bit of backstory. I've never really had any major medical issues before. But earlier this year, it's about the first week of the year. I'm sorry, give you a little bit more backstory. The end of last year, I had started having a really big headache and majorly just attributed to holiday stress. There was a lot of things going on in my family. We were traveling for a funeral and a wedding and, it just kind of brushed it off. And then once we came home, still had the headache, but again, I just thought it was something that was just a residual effect from the holidays and whatnot. And then it was January 8th in the morning. I still had that headache, but again, it was nothing different. And then at about 8:00, all of a sudden, my whole right side of my body just started going numb. And it was extremely intense, very quick. I have 2 daughters, and one daughter was about 10 months old. She was with me at the time, and my husband had just went to drop my oldest daughter off at school. Luckily, he was on his way back home. I went to go and pick up my phone to call him and realized I couldn't even grip my phone. So I went and used my other hand to call him and just said, "Hey, something feels weird." He got home in 2 minutes. And from the onset of the symptoms, it was probably maybe 6 minutes before we got in the car and he said, "We're going to the emergency room." And luckily, it was only about a less than 10-minute drive down the road. But in that time, um, my right side was still numb, but I had completely lost my speech. And pulled up to the hospital, went to go in. Um, I couldn't even walk in. You had to go inside and um, get someone to come out with a wheelchair. And this was about 15 minutes in. Of course, they do the whole triage and all that stuff, and I couldn't even speak, couldn't move. I was trying to act like everything was okay, because I am the type of person where, mind over matter, just be strong. But this just was unlike anything I have ever experienced before. And I, of course, had my 10-month-old with us too. So I could tell she was distressed. So that was kind of making me a little bit more nervous. Um, but they got me back in. They did a CAT scan. It initially looked okay, and then they did a second one. And then they found a blood clot um, on my left side. And that it all happened very quickly. This was maybe again like a half hour after the symptoms had started, and they then told my husband about this medication called TPA, and they said, there's a risk. There's I think a 3% risk that this might not, you know, um, give us the result that we wanted, but sign these papers and we'll start to administer it. So my husband signed the papers, and I think about 10 minutes later, they were realizing nothing was really happening. So they wheeled me back on into surgery and started to perform they started to do a thrombectomy to go inside, do the wiring just to clear the clot on their own. And by the time that the neurologist went to go and finish, the TPA had cleared the blood clot. So he didn't have to finish with what he was doing. Um, the clot was cleared, and then, they wheeled me back into a room. And again, this was maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours after the very first onset of the symptom. And I think I was still in the shock factor, not really knowing what was going on. Um, and asking the most, incredible nurses. I live in Arizona, and so the hospital that I had gone to was a tier 1 stroke hospital, ironically. So um, they knew everything that they were doing. They did a phenomenal job. Um, every question I was asking, they already knew, how to answer it next. Um, Even though my processing at that point had already started to slow down, I started to realize not only that I was scared of the physical effects, that I could start to be aware of the mental effects. Um, but then finished the surgery and came back into the room and really just tried to analyze from there, what happened? How did this, begin? And I honestly had started feeling much better. I had an enormous headache, but it wasn't anything that I felt, was extremely different until I tried to move. And I tried to move to my right side, and they said, "Don't try it yet. You are going to need to stay here. You very clearly are not someone that is good with staying in one position and being calm. Um, but we're going to need to stay here for a little bit." And I realized the severity of it when right before they went to wheel me off. Um, they looked at my husband and said, "All right, you guys should say goodbye. We're not really sure how this is going to turn out." And I think we both were just a very big shock. Like, this is all happening so quickly. I'm grateful that they were so efficient and quick, but just was a lot to process very quickly. So after the perform the surgery, then we just tried to figure out what we're supposed to do next and how this all happened. And we narrowed it down to about, I think it was about 10 days before I had turned my neck at my grandmother's funeral. And I will never forget, I had felt the most stress I've ever felt before. Everybody wears stress differently. I very much carry it, on my shoulders, and I could just feel it. And when I turned my neck, it was just a nothing intense. It felt like, I could not even explain it. It was a pain that was so intense. I tried to ignore it because it was really in in the middle of my grandmother's funeral. But, um, you know, I would pinpoint my headaches would always be, I'd say, hey, they're right here. I could feel it right here, but for some reason it's right here. Um, and everybody just said, it's just a migraine and whatnot. So they pinpointed it back to when I turned my head. Apparently that's when I had the dissection, and the dissection of the artery, and the clot had started forming, at that point. And then fast forward 10 days later, and that is when the stroke happened.
Far out,
So,
man, far out.
yeah.
Vertebral artery dissection
Hmm.
that caused a stroke, that caused a clot that went up into the brain, that caused a stroke. Perfectly healthy woman otherwise. And then all of a sudden, you're dealing with all of the impact of stroke in a space of
Mm,
minutes. You've gone from
mm,
normal to half of your body being gone, and then trying to understand what it all means and trying to make decisions. It's a very common experience, the one that you have just described. It's
mm,
similar to what I went through, but a
mm,
lot of stroke survivors have had vertebral artery dissection, have gone through similar things, and it started from something minor as well. In one of
mm,
the episodes, I interviewed a policewoman who, in a minor collision, uh, moved her head in a particular direction, and that caused a vertebral artery dissection. And then a few months later, I think it caused a stroke.
wow.
And she was in her 30s, and it just seems to come from nowhere and from nothing. And very few people even know to do anything about that headache that they have for a long period of time. She kind of felt it in her neck like you. She sort of knew
Mm,
where it was, and she would sort of say like it's kind of in that spot. But in the end,
wow.
it's just amazing to be talking to you and all those other people that I've spoken to, 123 episodes so far, all
Wow.
those other people that I've spoken to who have been in that situation. And here we are, we're talking about it. We're here, we're
Exactly.
able to share. Tell me about what it left you with. So I know you were in
Mm.
hospital and then you were dealing with the immediate issues, the TPA, by the way, which is an amazing drug
Oh my goodness.
called is called a oh I had it here. Where is it? It's called the oh my gosh, where was it? I just had it open here.
I should know too, but
Yeah. Uh, tissue plasminogen activator.
mm,
So, administered within the first 3 hours of stroke does for you guys like the most amazing thing and saves function, saves lives, saves all sorts of things, but it does have the risk of causing hemorrhages. In
mhm.
some patients, it can cause a brain hemorrhage. So, the opposite of what we're trying to achieve, and then therefore complications. But I've spoken to so many people who have been administered TPA, and they seem to get away with it, with like they get away with, I can't even describe it. It's so phenomenal. Like me and other stroke survivors go through years and years and years of stroke, and then people who have been administered TPA and get a good result within 3 hours, they kind of dodge a bullet, like a major
Mm.
bullet, and they don't realize the seriousness and the dramatic nature of what's just occurred. So when you had time to come around after all the surgeries, what were you left with that you had to recover from?
So I they had done about a couple days worth of, like you had said, uh, blood work, surgery, MRIs, all of that stuff. I was begging to go home because I felt fine. Um, Not realizing, again, I was laying down. I wasn't aware of even though I had got my feeling back on my side, I had lost about, I would say, about 75% of my mobility um, on that side. And then once leaving the hospital, my main focus was trying to get myself back physically. I was able to walk, but extremely slowly. I was not, able to lift any weights or anything like that. Couldn't hold my daughter, but I was okay with that. I said, okay, that's fine. It's a traumatic event. I can handle that. I'm going to start to do some physical therapy and, try to get that back. Um, I was very focused on the physical side because it was obvious to me that I completely neglected the cognitive and emotional side.
Mm.
I I left the ICU truly believing that things would just go back to normal. I would just need a little bit of physical therapy because I could think normally. They had given me medication to make sure that this wasn't going to happen again, and so let's just focus on the physical side. And I realized probably within the week that my cognitive side, my memory, my ability to comprehend, my ability to be calm and be patient and to not get overwhelmed and overstimulated. And I was most surprised with the unbelievable fatigue that it was as if it wasn't honestly physical fatigue. It was truly mental. Just, I could feel my brain trying to get back to normal and it was exhausting. And they would say, don't be on your phone, don't do anything. And I would just lay there and I could sleep all day. And it was very defeating because I felt like, okay, I'm exhausted, but let's focus on this physical side, So any energy that I would get, I would try to get my physical side back, not realizing even just taking a walk around the block. I came home and had to take a nap, and I have never been like that before. So I feel like I was left with the obvious physical side that I kept saying, they had told me, hey, you may never get back to 100%, but I'm the type of person where if you tell me I can't do something, then I'm going to try really hard to make sure that I can. So it was extremely motivating. But in doing that, the mental exhaustion, and then so I was very aware of the physical side, then the cognitive side, then the fatigue. And then I started to realize emotionally um, I had lost a lot of empathy. I had lost my ability to, you know, be calm and reason and make sense of things. Things became as night and day as possible. It's either A or B. There's no in between. There's no nothing else because any other forethought just took too much energy. And um, that was very hard to, first of all, explain, and then second of all, deal with because no one can see that. It is, my dad had said when he came to see me a month afterwards, he said, it's an invisible trauma that you're trying to sift through yourself and you're trying to reason with the deficiencies that you now have. And I was able to get back physically, I would say about 95%. And I'm extremely grateful for that. I have never known anything about stroke until this happened. And of course, after it happened, I started to do some research and humbled. I just was humbled by seeing how, first of all, many people my age have gone through it. And second of all, just how different every situation is and how truly grateful you need to be for what you have. And so I felt like I was in this bubble of, okay, I'm extremely grateful, but the struggle is unlike anything I can explain. It's hard for me to put words to it, and then it's hard for me to, become better. Um, and the irony for me is I'm a licensed counselor. And so I know all of these things. And it's like there was this filing cabinet in my brain that was just locked that I could not open. And it was a very trapped feeling, realizing, hey, this is, I can write down the reality as best as I can, but then sometimes it would come back and, you know, it would not make sense sometimes. So I would say, yes, I feel like I was very blessed physically to have gotten back what I did, but I focused way too much on that and was not honest enough, was not open enough, and was not realistic with myself enough to understand the cognitive and emotional effects. Because, like I said earlier, I'm a mind over matter person, but this is very much neurological.
Mm.
The doctor explained to me, he said, there are brain cells that were lost that you won't get back, but your brain will rewire itself, a different way. Um, and so that was and still is very hard to kind of come together. Um, and then as I was realizing all that, the the world pandemic started happening. um, and I was probably one of the most quarantined people of this year because I hadn't left my house much at all
Yeah.
since the beginning of everything that happening. But then trying to reason that layer, I really had to compartmentalize all of that was going on, because what was even just in my own mind was very difficult. And the main thing that I found to truly help me with that was finding a community of other people that have gone through this, because it truly is a situation that you might have a different story, but you can relate in the relearning of yourself, the shock, the so many of the things that came with it, that you never would have expected to happen. And so many people I have never met before have been my biggest saviors, because they were honest and they would say, it's going to take a while, or you might need help, or you might get back. And I had wonderful caregivers. I had incredible family, and, they were all doing their best. But um, it truly is an experience that if you're able to speak with somebody else, I it is the most life-giving opportunity,
Mm.
because it really enables a more positive recovery, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
but I've only gone through this once, so I'm not sure.
Look, you've
I'm
gone
not
through it enough. That's enough. That being said, I think uh, you're lucky that you're a counselor. You have that brain to understand and notice things in yourself. You have self-awareness that
Mhm,
some people don't have. The people that are going for counseling may not have the depth of self-awareness, and therefore they need support. They need counseling, right? I've been a coach for a very long time. 8 years ago, I had a stroke, and then I needed coaching and counseling myself. So I
mhm,
went and saw a psychologist and a coach, and I did everything I could to understand what blocks I was creating that were allowing that I was creating and getting in my way of recovery. So the physical stuff I did as well, but then I realized that my biggest recovery was going to have to be an emotional one, because I
mm,
had to come to terms with my health, my well-being, my almost dying, and my children and my wife and my mum and dad and my family and all the stuff that I wasn't going to be around to see if I did die. And then I had to be uh, then I had to deal with the physical, with the cognitive and the mental anguish that created while my brain was trying to heal and recover. And then I also had to deal with this physical side of it. So it's a three-pronged
Mm,
recovery, and people who are just doing the physical recovery, um, that might be important for them because they're in a wheelchair or they're using a cane or whatever, and I get it. But they've got to do that in combination with the emotional recovery, because that is a massive block for a lot of people, and that
mm,
gets in the way of the physical recovery. As much as you think that just going to the gym is what's going to get my physical body back, no, the emotional recovery is also going to get your body back. Your cognitive and your mental recovery is also going to get your body back, because it's
mm,
energy that's being distributed through those systems, and it's trying to put some energy there and put some energy there and put some energy there. And if you're got emotional trauma from 30 years ago that you've never dealt with, it's not gone away, it's back. And it's back in a
mhm,
bigger way because you're dealing with the emotional trauma as well as the stroke trauma. So I really got a handle on my recovery very quickly on the emotional recovery, got that out of the way quickly. And when I say quickly, a year and a half, 2 years of therapy, I had dealt with a lot of that stuff, started apologizing a lot. I love you a lot,
mm,
doing all that
mhm,
stuff, which was a different version of me that I hadn't really expressed before. So that was great. And as that started to resolve itself, then I started to find my cognitive function started to come back, and I started to
mm,
focus on what I can do to support myself, which was all about nutrition, which was all about meditation and imagining myself achieving my goals and imagining myself walking better and all that stuff. And that also then supported the physical recovery. So there was this really three-pronged approach that for me started with the heart. That's where it had to start.
mm,
And once that process had begun and I started to clear some of that negative energy around there, then I was able to focus on other things. And it was freeing and relieving, and also great to put to rest stuff that I've been
mm,
carrying my whole life. So when you say what you say about how you've understood recovery needs to go, um, I want to dig a bit deeper there, because I want to get a feeling for what were you going through emotionally? What were you
mm.
thinking about when when you've been diagnosed with this thing, and then also you've come back and you're not the person that they knew
Yep.
you to be up until that point in time. What were you
Mm.
going through?
I would say, first of all, I really appreciate you being honest and open about the importance of the inward looking at the heart, and then how that in turn gave so much more positivity for the cognitive. Because I've been trying to do the reverse, and I've tried to focus on the cognitive and not the emotional. And um, for me, I was a very outgoing, personable, loving, not perfect by any means,
Thank God.
but generally, you know, I have an incredible husband and great kids, and we like to be very social and outgoing. And what hurt me the most is the awareness that I am very different. I am not as excited or um, honestly loving at times. That my emotional, empathetic side, it had vanished. It was almost like that's what the clout went and took from me, because I would try to find my heart. I would try to speak, and it was terrifying. And then it put me in a place of, I used to be really outgoing, and now I'm scared of what people are going to see. Not because I necessarily care as much about what they think, but because them seeing this in me shows me the reality of what it looks like. And that was more terrifying,
Wow.
um, to focus on. You know, um, I didn't really want to see a lot of people because I, first of all, would become overstimulated very easily. And my own kids overstimulated me.
Mm,
That was very difficult. Very difficult is to try to a kid doesn't understand what's going on. And so thankfully my husband knew, I mean, goodness, you get your match during this because they go through a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, but to explain it to a child, not necessarily explain what happened, but mommy's not as happy, or hey, we just have to be quieter here. So the emotional side really put me in a position where I remember being in the hospital. I remember them saying, hey, there's a high chance you're going to deal with a little bit of depression. And I said, I know how that stuff goes. I've studied it. Thank you for letting me know. I really appreciate it. But, I already know how to handle that.
Mhm.
So I don't have to worry about that. And I'll never forget the look in my husband's eyes. He was kind of like, okay, well, just they know what they're talking about way better than you do. And um, I had hit probably after the second month a deep emotional place where I had realized I was shocked I had almost passed. There is something now that's different about me. It's not like I can dig in there and find it and wake up with it tomorrow morning. I am frustrated this is taking so long. And it was almost a hamster wheel of negativity that I had really never had an immense amount of before. My self-awareness honestly came more from being aware of other people's needs. And that's how I would go ahead and take care of life. And that's what made me feel good before. But when that's stripped, and I can't take care of anybody and I need to focus on myself, it was almost like I had started to clean out the mess that I didn't even know was there, and then try to recreate a new mentality of how to be aware of the negative, but to show the positive and to reawaken, an emotional side that once was there and then now isn't. And I mean, I've been married to my husband for 10 years. And so we've been through a lot, and seeing him just kind of, I very much would be attentive to how people would react. I was very aware of people's facial expressions and everything to try to say, like, are they seeing something? What do they know? And he was very open with me the whole time and would kind of say, you're pretty harsh. And, it's as if they're the how would he say it? It would be he understood that I was different, but it started getting to the point where when we were in the hospital, they're like, nah, it's a 3 to 6 month recovery. So I was like, oh, 3 months tops, I'll be fine. And then when I started to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time, you know, feeling love for someone,
Mm.
which I never had a hard time doing before. Where did that come from? Um, I've studied and know a lot of stuff, but I didn't study this stuff. This is something that's completely different, and it was new territory. And so um, I would say about month 2 to 3, I definitely went into a bout of depression where I realized that, I was okay with the fact that it had happened, but I was scared of what the future was going to look like because I didn't know how much I could control it anymore,
Mm.
and really tried to grasp the tangibles that I could change, just being very simple. Okay, just try to give someone a hug, or, try to think more positively. Try to put more positivity inside me. I realized that was what was the problem, is I was, you know, really not filling myself with a lot of positivity, because what I had known to be my love and positivity and, high emotion was other people and being with other people and being social. When that's gone, I had to rethink, you know. And so in a weird way, I understand that I have been created to kind of be a different person, but it's almost, I'm saying this in month 10. I was not
Mhm.
thinking it then, but it's almost as if it really took out all the things that, I really needed that were just kind of noise. And now I can focus on, here's my purpose. Here is the reality of it. Here's what's important. Here is, you know, here's where you need to generate your energy and just be a lot more simple and positive. And um, it it was still difficult though, because and even still now, I'm realizing, I was even speaking with my husband about this recently, because it I would say I have a grasp of the emotions, but it's still very hard to feel it. And every day that goes by, I feel like it should be a lot further along, but I'm realizing this process takes time and there is no time limit.
Yes.
And I need to be patient
You need to
with.
stop.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to stop saying, and when I say you, everyone who's a stroke survivor who is becoming impatient needs to stop giving themselves timelines, deadlines,
Mm,
um, goals to achieve by a certain date, because that's going to be disappointing because you're not going to achieve most of them. And what you need to be doing is looking back on what you've achieved.
mm,
Now, how far you've come. Oh, okay. I couldn't do that a month ago. I'm doing it now. I couldn't do that 2 months ago. I'm doing it now. Instead of putting a date and a time on when I'm going to feel this, that, and the other. Now, I know with emotional challenges that you're experiencing, the heart has neurons in it, the same as the brain has neurons in it. The heart has around between 30,000 and 120,000 neurons, whereas the brain has billions.
mm,
And the things that you're not feeling may have been interfered with for the time being, and then you can retrain that to come back in the heart, just like the doctor said they're going to retrain parts of your brain that have been missed, that are missing, can rewire. The same thing can happen in the heart. So be comforted in knowing that it will come. And
mm,
what happens in this moment when people have stroke is, before that, they were in a team sport called family, life, friends, and all that kind of stuff. But stroke is like tennis. It's
mm.
about the individual, and it's got nothing to do with anyone else. And the coaches sit way up above the court, and all they can do is go left to right, just watch the game play out,
It's so true.
you know? And your husband and your friends are now in the stand watching your game and how you're playing it. They
Mm,
can judge you as much as they want. They can cheer for you as much as they want. They can criticize you as much as they want, but they are not allowed to talk to you during the game.
mm,
And now you're on your own, man. You got to do it on your own. And when you have the opportunity to make a decision about whether I interact with all those people or save that energy for me,
mm,
it's a very simple decision to make. You don't interact and you save that energy. And explaining that to people is the most challenging thing, because they think you're being rude, mean, etc. And it's okay that they remind you of that as well, because you need somebody to say that was a bit mean, because that allows you to then adjust slightly your behavior so that you're not coming across as mean. And if you do come across as mean or nasty, you can have a conversation and say, hey, I know that might have sounded a bit mean and nasty, but
mm.
actually I'm just playing tennis at the moment, and I've got to do this on my own.
It's
It's
so true.
because the energy that I have, I can't allocate it to this particular place where I did before, because that means that I spent 3 hours in bed.
I think that was a very big pinpoint too, was realizing that my energy is not limitless anymore,
Mm.
and that I need to make wise decisions about where I do put my energy. And I think that was also difficult, kind of like you had said, even just saying, if somebody wants to go out to lunch, I can barely keep up with the first couple of sentences, and realizing, you know what, that wasn't the best situation for me, unfortunately. And it sounds very selfish. And there was nothing the person did wrong. It was just the awareness that my, I think I had seen a picture at some point when they explained a person, stroke person's brain, like battery life, and how quickly it just goes. And it was so relatable because it was as if, that was something I needed to learn. But at the same time, like you said, it makes you very focused on what you do and don't put your energy into. And we are actually, my husband, he's been in the military for 6 years. And so our lifestyle is very, you know, go, 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 go. I mean, a couple months after it happened, we were supposed to move. And there was just so many things outside of us that thankfully he did an incredible job of, like he would say, just block out all the noise. Like you don't need to worry about anything else. You focus on you. And if that means you read and you sleep and then you have energy just to sit and play with your girls for an hour, so that day they see that, that's important. And then close the book on that day and go to the next day. And then maybe we can be one more step ahead. And that part I appreciated, but at the same time, I wish that I would have been more aware, or at least had the guidance afterwards. This is something I've honestly become passionate about, is, you know, everybody recovers much differently, but I had so many questions and there was so much that was going on that I wished, and I looked and I found yours and there is not a lot of resources, or from at least what I could see, of people that will talk more about the cognitive and the emotional side, and then just being okay with what it is, and then just moving forward every single day, and to look back and say, okay, I'm better than that day, or you know what, I've plateaued, or I can see I went down. And that hike, even though I was feeling okay in the moment, I had to pay for it 3 full days afterwards. And to explain that to someone, again, is a humbling experience. But at the same time, it's really become obvious, the people around you that will be on your corners to cheer you on when they say, I might not understand it, but we know that you're not the kind of person to want to sit around and wait to do this, but to recreate the best new form of you, you need to be as focused and as honest as possible. And that's, for me, taken a lot of a lot of writing down my questions, because I will think of something and forget it. I mean, I still get overwhelmed going into a store just to buy things. And, I had explained I had felt, a bout of depression. And luckily I came out of that. But then something else I had never experienced before was anxieties and being worried. And I used to have a very carefree mind. The things we had gone through, I mean, we had just moved back from Korea a couple months before, and we had gone through a lot. And so, you know, I had never really dealt with, really being worried on a continual, um, not just, oh, I'm worried about this on this day, and oh, the day comes and goes, and you don't have to worry about it. But no, being anxious, first of all, that it's going to happen again.
Mm.
That has been, I will never forget, at my 6 month appointment, the doctor had said, hey, we're going to take you off blood thinners because everything looks great. And to be honest, I looked at my husband and I was like, I want to be on them because I can't have this happen again. I've seen it where people have had it again, and the doctor can't look at me and say it's not going to happen again. So I would like my guarantee that it's not going to happen again. And I'd like to stay on this medication. And the doctors, they are way more wise than I am. So of course I did what he had said to do, but the anxieties after that, um, not just that it will happen again, but just all the other things that would come into my mind, just going to the store and, someone getting frustrated if I couldn't figure out what I was doing. And it was almost like being in public was very overwhelming. And I have still, I think, yeah, we're at over month 10. I'm still extremely limited in my public gatherings, especially with what's going on in the world. But realizing that, okay, now that there are anxieties there, now I need to be aware of, you know, how to understand them, but also how to, try to be better. My motto in life is, every day is a new opportunity, and it's a new opportunity to get better. And no matter what happened before, it's a fresh, new, clean start. And I think, that's the beauty in a weird way of this situation is, like I said before, it almost cleaned out a lot of things that weren't, supposed to be there. I started to focus in, but then of course, roadblocks, things come in the way. So this has been, it's been definitely a different situation. I have yet to actually be able to go, and I've been wanting to go and see a psychologist. I've asked my husband 100 times. I just wish someone could go in my brain and tell me, what am I missing? Where can I get it from? Same thing with my
I
heart,
can tell you. I can tell you.
Oh, all right.
No worries. Very early days, and anxiety about what might happen in the future is normal. Now, as a counselor, you can better understand and empathize with people that came to you that had
Mm,
anxiety. One
mhm,
in three people who have a stroke will have depression in
mm,
some form. So you're one of those.
yeah.
Many of those people can overcome it and get support and help. Um, with uh, as a counselor, now you understand what it's like to have
Mm,
depression. As a counselor, now you understand what it's like to feel out of control.
mm,
You can be a better counselor as a result of that when you go back to work. At month 10, I was forgetting who visited me, how to write
mm,
an email. I couldn't drive. I couldn't work. By 3 or 4 months after that, I started to notice incremental improvement in my memory, my
mm,
ability to type that email, to write. So I focused on that stuff. In that time, I said a lot of apologies, a lot of sorries. In that time, I made a lot of wrong decisions. I abused people verbally. I was rude. I was mean. I was short. I was nasty. And I apologized. So, what you're missing is not anything specific that anyone is going to be able to pinpoint for you. It's that ability to just go with the flow.
mm,
And if you go with the flow and you come to a speed hump, you just deal with that speed hump at that point in time. And whatever you need to get over that speed hump is what you do just to get to the other side of that. And what that's done is then given you a tool that you now have. So if that speed hump comes up again in the future, you don't need to work out how to get over it. You just need to access that tool and go for it again.
mm,
So what you're doing is you're just building a little toolbox of things that are going to make you more resilient and able to solve the same problems quicker as they occur in the future.
mm,
And if you take some control in spaces where you can take control, this is what I did. I took control in my nutrition,
mm,
and I took control in my how I acted after I misbehaved, and that gave me a part of the equation that meant that I didn't rely on doctors and other people for everything. I relied for them on the medical stuff, but I took responsibility for my
mm,
own stuff. So when I came home, I didn't worry about the doctor's stuff at all. I let them worry about that. I just worried about taking responsibility for my behavior, my action, what I put in my mouth, and what I focused my mind on. So instead of focusing on problems, I focused on solutions.
Mm.
The more solutions you focus on, the more solutions you'll find and you'll get.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I had the
That's
same
very
amount of
good.
problems and more than other people. So I just focused on, here's a problem. What are the 10 solutions I can allocate to that? And which one's the one I want to actually take action on? Which is the solution that I'm going to implement?
Mm.
Which
That's
meant,
really powerful.
yeah, which meant that when I had problems, they weren't overwhelming as if there was more problems than solutions, because I've got 20 problems and I don't know how to solve them at all. I just broke it down one at a time and I solved that one. And I did have a lot of conversations with people to say, thanks for the invitation to go out. I can't do it today. And let me tell you why. Because stroke somehow messes with you in this particular way. And this is how
Mm.
I'm feeling. And I know I can't describe it, but it's not about you. I want to really be with you, but I can't. And you're welcome to come over and just sit with me for an hour. But after an hour, I might be gone. I might be wasted. So if I
Mhm.
am, don't take offense. It might be just a good time for you to go home, but just know that I'm not trying to offend you, annoy you, or not be with you. I really want to, but I need to reserve my energy. And now that you have a podcast episode, you can refer people back to it and say, have a listen
Mm.
to it so that you can understand me a little more and you don't have to take offense and feel bad about me being different, you know?
Mm. I think that that has been one thing I've also noticed is that a lot of people, when this has happened to them, they have been very open and very, as far as, social media is concerned, and very honest and vulnerable about it. And all of those people have encouraged and really helped me. And I have not found that grounding yet. I have, as time goes on, I will say, okay, I'm going to share and I'm going to share. And every single time I almost, clam up. And so I'll do a couple, posts here and there, and I'll just kind of explain it. But it's just extremely unlike my character to not just be, open and outgoing and honest. And I've honestly been looking forward to this because aside from my husband, um, I have not been able to explain it because I I have had a hard time being aware of it. And then as soon as I am aware, I don't feel like draining my energy in explaining it. I know that sounds terrible. Um,
Not terrible at all. Like I'm supposed to be, so I'm learning from, the internet gurus of the world is how to do this for a living, how to make money coaching stroke survivors, how to sell courses and all that type of thing. That's what I'm doing. If anyone listening hasn't worked out what I'm trying to achieve, I want to make this my career, my living.
mm,
For 3 weeks or 4, I have not made a post where I talk to the camera about something that I think is reasonable and necessary to share to stroke survivors. And one of those things was acceptance. I want to make a
mm,
post about acceptance, and I've been thinking about it for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I can't bring myself to sit in front of the phone for 20 minutes or 10 minutes talking about acceptance.
mm.
Now, I'm breaking all the internet marketing rules and all that junk, but I just can't do it. And I'm
Mhm,
not going to. I'm not going to do it because I'm told by somebody else that I have to do it. I'm going to do it when I'm ready. And I can have a lovely conversation with you and all the other guests that I've had in the last 4 weeks, but I can't do that. And
mm,
I don't know why. I don't know why. I've tried many days to get to that point of recording it. And maybe I haven't accepted something about acceptance that I need to talk about. Like,
mhm,
I don't know. But isn't it
mhm,
funny that acceptance has made me stuck?
mm. It's powerful too because it's like my first thought, at least for myself, is you need to accept yourself. You
Mm,
need to be okay. Even though I will try to say it as much as possible, it's all good.
mm,
No, being realistic. Am
mm,
I accepting who this person is now? Because there is a lot of positive, but there are a lot of things that are different. But every time I get into that rut, I always come back to the blunt reality that I was given another chance.
Mm.
So I need to make that worthwhile. And nobody is guaranteed tomorrow. And I will never forget when it had happened that, yeah, of course, after that for a while, I had never thought about myself not living until, 60, 65. I never thought about, what it would be like for my husband, my kids. Like, was my time, did I use my time wisely before? Was I so focused on myself? Really analyzing my purpose. And I'm not saying that people who haven't had a stroke don't have a purpose. I'm not saying that, but to overcome, and as my husband tells me all the time, there's so many gifts I've been given, and this has been very blatantly, a traumatic event, but you have had the better side of this. So I feel an urgency to use that, but kind of like you were saying, I've had a hard time just saying, okay, even looking at myself in the camera and saying, you know what, this is how it is. And I'm not just going to say that it's okay now. I'm going to have to feel it and accept it and keep that reality and keep that momentum going, because I know the other people that I have seen that have done that. I know how positively they have impacted me. And I've never met them before. I know how much I appreciate people's honesty of the good and the bad. And I think I used to make it look like everything was good, if there was something bad, it's okay. But the reality of it's okay to be good and it's okay to not be good, but I need to make this worthwhile. And I think that that's why I've been trying to, you know, figure out when's the most appropriate time to be as honest about this, because I want to be ready for whatever opportunity I'm given. And like you had said, as far as counseling goes, man, I can relate on a whole other level now. Before, I just knew all of the textbook answers of how to solve, and I had the heart to help. But now I have the mind to understand, which is
Mm.
like, whoa, I didn't realize that. I thought that, you know, people in my profession, which I've not been able to professionally practice because of the military. I haven't been able to do that for a couple of years now, but just in our lifestyles, we like to have open door policy, we love people. But now when I hear somebody say the word depression, anxiety, things are different, I'm different, acceptance, being honest about the bad, man, it's almost like I can get on their level so much quicker than I could before, because now all the BS is gone. I don't now I do have moments kind of like you were explaining. I will have times that I will see myself lash out or be, a form of emotion that I had not really dealt with a lot in my life is anger, and my impatience or my anger will happen so quickly that I'm just like, who is that person?
Mm.
And I will realize it later, but then I have to go back to, being honest with myself, apologizing, realizing it, but also now I can understand people when they say they have dealt with anger. And I know there it's on so many different spectrums, but I think just being honest with yourself and to be real, I've had to write it down and I've had to see my own handwriting write it. That has helped me see the reality of who I was in January, who I am now, and being okay with. I am so glad you said that about the timeline, because you know, you can read that you can recover in this time or this time. And my husband even said, we're about to hit your 1 year. I'm like, you know what? There's not a number dial above our heads of how many more days left we have until we're recovered, quote unquote, or maybe this is the recovery is it's just somebody that is, I'm in the same body, but a lot more. I, I before was saying new, but other people have been helping to say renewed. And I appreciate that perspective because, you know, it happened. I'm over the time of having to, hash out why it happened. Is it going to happen again? Now I'm on the other side where it's like, okay, it is what it is. Let's do the best we can. And, you know, being honest with myself that it's, you know, if I got angry just an hour ago because I was starting to get stressed out about even just doing this, which I've been looking forward to so much, but I really wanted to be as clear minded as possible. And my kid just doing something small and it was just like earth shattering. It was not a big deal. It was super small, but I have to be more aware of my reactions where before I would be, yeah, it's fine. It's no big deal.
It's
So,
interesting. It's interesting for me to try and engage people to come on the podcast and read their comments in the Messenger app or wherever it was that I contacted them or via email about, okay, when will I be on? What will I say? What will I be about? Who will I? And all these questions, their
mm,
personality comes back in all these all these ways, which has always been there, and they're trying to control what's going to happen in the podcast. And all I'm saying is, guys, we're just getting together to have a chat. There's nothing to plan for. If you're planning for every chat that you're going to have every day, there's some work that you need to do on that. And it was interesting to
mhm.
read yours. Will we be okay for that day? You constantly checking in with me to make sure that I was going to be available and it was going to be. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'm available. If you're available, if it works for you, if I can make sure that you're going to be well enough, and because I understand that stroke survivors
Mm,
have to cancel, or they're not feeling great that day, or something else came up, whatever. But I see that side of people and it's their personality and it's no longer serving them because
mm,
now they're dealing with stroke. And if you're going to be that frantic about everything, as well as try and deal with stroke, it's just going to be overwhelming again and it's
mm,
harder to deal with. And I love what you said about purpose. Use the experience of what's happened to you to find your purpose. Now, don't get me wrong. Purpose is not something you think about in your head and then you find it and then you do it. It's not, it starts in your heart as well.
mm,
That's why the emotional healing has to happen, because then your purpose can come to life. For me, my purpose just started because I thought I'm going to try and find other stroke survivors, because 8 years ago, there was
mm,
no podcast, there was nothing happening. And I wanted to meet people that were like me so I didn't feel weird and strange and alone. And I thought, I'm just going to reach out in this way. And then if they're happy to, I'm going to share that story, because I I need to be able to re-listen to those episodes over and over again if I need to. And what I didn't know was that I was discovering my purpose. And then a few years later, I realized that this podcast that started off selfishly for me was actually more for other people.
mm,
And the more that they responded positively to it, the more I got out of it. And the more I had to continue doing it, couldn't stop. And then somebody said to me, wouldn't it be good if you could make a living from this? And it was like, wow, like I didn't know that that was possible. And I'm not making a living from it right now. And I don't know if I will be in 12 months, but the idea that I can do this, connect with people from all over the world, realize that I'm not alone, realize that I'm similar to all these other people, helped me uncover my purpose in life, which was to connect with other people, really,
mm.
and to make their life better. And to do that will make my life better at the same time. So in episode 121, I interviewed a guy called Nick Kemp, and Nick is a guy um, who looks at this Japanese way of finding purpose. They call it ikigai, and the ikigai way is not something that you can actually pinpoint. It's more of a felt sense. It's a sense that's internal, that when you're experiencing purpose or you're experiencing that moment, that's the ikigai moment. And it's like, it could be at a pub with your mates having a drink. It could be riding your bike. It could be at work. It could be anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's kind of all encompassing. And it's not, my purpose is just to do podcasts and release them and speak to people about it. Part of my purpose is to be able to leave my day job and come home and record a podcast, where I never used to be able to do that before. I had to be
Mm,
at my day job all day, every day. That's at least what I told myself. And now, part of my felt sense of I'm contributing to the planet, to myself, to my well-being, to my emotional state, and to other people's emotional state, has come from not really knowing what I started 5 years ago. It was just starting it and then seeing where it evolves from and how it goes and what it ends up becoming. And then being comfortable with people going, it could turn into this or it might turn into that. And me not holding on to those ideas, me just going, all right, well, if it turns into that, it turns into that. Let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden, I'm 5 years down. I've spoken to 123 people.
Man.
And it's an amazing thing that the Bill before stroke never contemplated this stuff. This was not a guy. This was not the guy that you're talking to now. It's a completely different guy. He was
Mm.
so thick and so stupid in a loving way. Like, it was just done. And now he's more aware, more evolved. He's emerging out of his shell into this different version of himself that people don't recognize, but they love.
Mm.
And they go, okay, we can now be more vulnerable around this guy who was our friend, and we spoke about the football and we spoke about politics and we did all this junk. But now we can talk about emotional stuff.
Mm.
And we didn't have the ability to talk with him about that emotional stuff before. And isn't that great to be able to offer your friends that beauty, that wisdom? And also my wife, you talk about your husband. I mean, my wife, she went through the ringer, man. Did she go through the
Mm.
ringer? I interviewed her for episode 100. And in that episode,
Oh.
we spoke about what it was like for her to go through stroke
Wow.
and to have to deal with me, and also what it was like to have to deal with my brain surgery 2 weeks after her mum passed.
Oh.
You know,
Oh my gosh.
to talk about putting somebody through the ringer.
Oh.
And now me being able to hold the space for her, because I understand how emotions are important in my life, I can now allow her to be emotional in her own way
Mm.
with me. And before the age of 37, before my stroke, I didn't know how to do that. And we were missing a critical part of our relationship because I couldn't be
Mm.
an emotional kind of guy and make space for her. So your journey is just beginning, and your learning and your connection to your husband and what you're going to be able to offer people, and not in a monetary way or in a, like, just your offering as a human being is going to evolve and it's going to grow, and you're going to be somebody that they may not recognize, but they're going to fall in love with again. And they're going to go,
Mm.
wow, this person is somebody that I can look up to. And, they'll do the old cliche, you're so inspiring and all that kind of stuff. They have one word to describe so much more. They don't know how to articulate it more than
Yeah.
you're inspiring. That's not what they mean. They mean that they love you more. They can be, they can be more around you than they could before. And why?
Mm-hmm.
Because you had a bloody stroke.
Mm. Which, I mean, I always thought I was writing my own story and making my own choices, and then something like that completely takes the control away. And for another time, I will say, I have also learned, you know, my recovery has been one thing, but then seeing what my husband has gone through and seeing, the incredible effects that it has had. I have appreciated the people, which is actually just a small handful. I mean, everyone's worried about how I'm doing, but the people that have asked him how he's doing has actually helped me more, because he has needed someone to talk to and someone to be honest with, because not only have I changed, but it's a daily kind of like, explaining your wife, like, it's a daily thing. And it's a journey that, of course, if they wish, they probably could hit a button and say, I always say, I was like, I miss January 7th stuff, who was completely fine, and January 8th stuff is completely different. And he has always been so accepting, but I would be lying if I said, it hasn't put us in positions where it's like, wait, I'm a different person now. Does this mean are we supposed to still happen? You know, is this a new change? I mean, I understand we have kids, but and to have him hear me say these things is, you know, he's just had to stomach and had to deal with. And, you know, again, the focus has been on me, but the people that have helped, which, like I said, and not in a bad way, but the small amount that he's been able to speak to, you know, have really given him so much more life, and hope. I think actually that's a big word.
Mm.
Um, that it's going to be okay, and no matter what she says, I guess this is what true love is.
Yeah.
when and you make the commitment for better or for worse. I mean, this is a worse we had not anticipated, but he has always said, but you're still here. And, you know, that's something that we have learned to really cherish and hone in, and to be more um, intentional about. Is we have always been so others focused that inside our own bubble, it's so fulfilling, and it's so, just just the four of us being together, um, has been, has put us at a much different pace. But at the same time, I never realized that, how much we all needed it. And it's, it has been a journey. And I think to be honest, you're probably out of the 10 months this has happened, I haven't begged to spend time with really anyone, which is going to sound so terrible, especially to people who have, if I do one thing with somebody, then I'm done for the next day or two. And I think when people see me do something like, okay, well, let's plan something else the next day and the next day, I'm like, no, please don't be offended. I used to be able to be a marathoner, like I could not, as far as physical, I can never know. I was not running, but as far as social interaction, like let's do this and let's do this and let's do this. And I'm not there right now. Who knows if I'll ever be back to that place, but the place that I'm at right now is just very focused and intentional and realistic in finding out what that, um, the inner, like you were saying, like the inner feeling of being able to feel the purpose. And I know, like, my heart jumps every time I see, the reason why I actually found you was because, oh, I can't remember her last name, but Kelly, um, from Hawaii,
Yes.
she, oh my goodness, not only very real and open and genuine, but her story was just, incredible. And she keeps telling it. And that's what I think has helped me, is people keep telling their story, or people at least keeping open. And if they want to not tell their story for a couple of weeks and then come back and say, hey, it's because, that was a lot for me to deal with, but this is what I chose. It's like you're getting back the control that you thought you lost when this happened, but you're really just realizing, no, the more I'm aware, the more I can take care of the things that are important. And, you know, we go from there. So
Mm.
I very much appreciate this. This is an extremely great form of therapy that I think should be charging a lot of money. And I think a lot of us stroke survivors would throw a lot at, to be honest, because I think, and speaking from a therapist mindset, I know the word is escaping me. I know, like, the cliche, I know the what it looks like when people, it looks like to go get help, but it just needs to become more of a realistic thing so it can reawaken, marriages that, hey, we don't know what's going on, but we're going to seek and we're going to find out what are the areas that we can learn from this and become better. And, you know, maybe I was not, we both weren't really focused on each other as much before, but now we're extremely focused on each other, and, for the better or for worse. And gratefully, I mean, we're still here though. And if we wake up tomorrow morning, we still have another day. So just trying to run with this as best as we can. But also, this is coming off of me coming back from the beach, which I think was the best time I've had all year, just to be just to let go and just to relax. I think it's really understated how much as stroke survivors we're always trying to figure things out and then to rest, and but just to relax and to have that steady pace of just contentment was unbelievable. And at least for me, and everybody has their own thing that, they feel most comfortable with. But for me, and even being with my family, it was just like we were in heaven.
Mm.
It was, I was not kidding when I posted and I said, I want to figure out a way to make this thing a reality because it was incredible. So this timing could not have been more perfect.
Yeah, great. I'm glad. With regards to, I like to say to people, if somebody's doing something that you want to do, it's possible for you to do it as well. If they're living
Mm,
by working 4 days a week, and you want to work 4 days a week, it's possible. All you need to do is find out how they did it and do
mm,
what they do similarly, the way that's going to suit you to make it possible. Does that mean that you have to make some changes or fix a few things, or yeah, that might mean that, but there's no reason why if human A has done something, human B can't do it. And
mm,
you can get help from somebody to help you find a way to get to that point so that you can live the kind of lifestyle that suits you. Kelly was on episode 99. She had an ischemic stroke, probably caused by being on the pill medication.
mm,
And I can't believe the amount of people that I've spoken to in the last 20 episodes that have said something similar. Um,
mm,
the great thing about women who have a stroke is they tend to be more open, more likely to share, more likely to get out and connect with other people. I struggle a lot to find men to come onto the show,
mm.
and I don't know why. And well, I do know why, because they're dumb like me, like I was, and they need to become wise. And until they become wise, they think they're going to solve all their problems on their own, and that they have all the solutions, and that they can't be vulnerable, and they can't
Mm,
do all these things. So um, that's why men don't do it. They feel like they need to be men, and they need to show this, create a front of how they've got everything under control and everything is
mm,
sorted. And I try to push through a number of times these men barriers, and I didn't have the skills to do it because I didn't seek out the right help. I didn't go to the right
mm.
person to guide me. And then I thought I could solve my problems of 37 years in 2 sessions. You know, I was going to go twice. I'll speak to the counselor. It'll get sorted, and I'll move on with my life, and I'll be better. And it never worked. So I started a lot of things, but never followed through with them. But then after
Mm,
stroke, I had out of the 4 years between the first bleed and the third bleed and then surgery, I had so much spare time because I was at home the majority of that time doing nothing, trying to recover. And I thought, well, here's a good time and opportunity for me to focus on fixing some of those things that I'd attempted to fix before, but um, hadn't really allocated the right amount of space and time to do
mm,
it. So it's a conversation that needs to happen. That's why I'm having it, so that you and people like you can come on and have it and begin that conversation, and then get curious about, okay, what did I get out of that? And do
mm,
I want more of that? Do I want to get more of those things that I never thought I would get out of this conversation that surprised me in a loving way, in a great way? All right. And if I do want to get more of that, what do I have to do? Well, I have to have more conversations. Who with? Doesn't
mhm,
matter. But I just have to have them. And if I have them, more great things will come from that. More learnings, more understanding, more awareness, more empathy, more sympathy, more kindness, and then more recovery.
mm,
And that's what I think begins recovery from anything. It's always conversation, whether it's a trauma from the past or a new trauma. It's a conversation about it, and finding people who are prepared to just hold your hand and say, we're going to talk about this. It's going to be hard, but once
Mhm.
you've done it, it's going to be easier.
Mhm.
And,
That's so true.
and then you're going to start to feel freer to explore more things. And once you get into the habit of having hard conversations and loving the other side of that and going, wow, that's relieving, or that's freeing, or that's whatever it is. Once you get good at that, then it's easy to go and have more and more harder
Mhm.
conversations. And then there's more and more space and healing and recovery that happens. So that's kind of my philosophy. And I had a feeling that your philosophy was similar when I reached out. But of course, I love to hear about your philosophy in the context of stroke. And I just want to reassure you that it's early days, things are going to get better. You're going to have hard days. And when you face them, they're going to relieve you of something that
Mm.
has been blocking you and been getting in your way. And it's going to be a better life for this experience. You're going to, I don't know, like, you never read a book about a guy who had a perfect life, everything went well, it was fantastic. You thought, well, awesome, great story. They died at 110 and everything was perfect. You never ever hear about
Mm. That's so true. That is so true. And I think there is so much beauty in, you know, being comfortable to speak to people you've never met before. And I think it's so powerful that there is the space for that, first of all. I mean, that's
that.
most important, is that there's the availability, and then the people that are wise, and that you saying to me them in the early days. I mean, I feel like I've passed my expiration date when I was said, oh, 3 to 6 months, you should be done. So to hear those words are more empowering than what I've heard in months. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to, like I said, to have this opportunity. But at the same time, it's almost like a weird euphoric feeling afterwards, because it's like, wow, okay, here's someone I've never met before. You were just honest about a traumatic situation. You gained incredible wisdom. And then, I promise you, I'm a much happier person leaving this conversation than when I started. Not because I didn't want to have the conversation, but just because, there's all those uncovered files in your filing cabinet. And one of the biggest things that a lot of people told me to push away when this had happened, I kept saying this was stress induced. I very, 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 very strongly believe it. Everyone said, no, that's implying that you brought it on yourself. It's not you. And I'm saying, no, I'm not saying I brought it on myself. I'm saying I'm aware enough to know the stress that I was under. And now I'm so passionate you know, to have people just be more open, and to find a place that, we don't have to be putting ourselves in those positions. Not saying if you get stressed, you're going to have a stroke. I'm
No,
not implying that,
no.
but just saying I'm having to relearn a new life to minimize that, just so that mine and other people's lives can be better. Because it's not going to help the situation if I'm not going to be able to help other people if I am overstressing myself. And I think I'm really encouraged from the conversation to really explore, this new person that I hope to have a lot to give, because that is the common denominator from the stuff before and the stuff after. Is I've always wanted to give, but now I want to give a little bit more intentionally, with a different type of purpose and a different type of relation, and understanding that, I never used to look for help or to ask for it, but you and the other people have gone through this have been, kind of like the guiding light to say it's going to be okay. We thankfully have this platform, and hopefully it continues to grow. Unfortunately, people keep continuing to have them, but that's where this platform was so important, because when the doctor said to me, oh, this never happens to anybody, and then, or you're perfectly healthy, oh, this is just a freak accident, move on with your life. Well, I have met a lot of people that unfortunately have been through a similar situation. And not that I want to normalize this by any means, but just to be more aware, and to be a good, you know, encouragement or whatever that's going to look like. So I really can't thank you enough. I have taken so much. I've tried to be taking mental notes, and I have my notes that I put in here that I was going to talk about, but I'm excited to go into write these things down because at the end of the day, honestly, they're life-giving, you know? And it's very important, especially with the status of our world right now. It's
Yeah.
just crazy and everything as it is. And we need a lot more hope. I guess I'm going to go back to that word, a lot more hope for something better because it's definitely there. We just need to find it. And I appreciate the people. You know, my husband's been with me through this whole entire thing and he's been incredible, but I'll probably come out of this conversation and he's going to say, I've been here this whole time and you've not been this happy. And, you know, that's just because there's beauty in relating with other people. That's why it's called relationships. You're supposed to be able to relate. So
Beautiful. On that note, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And when we finish this, just go there and just tell him what you really think of him and give him a massive hug. Yes.
Thank you. He'll appreciate that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Discover how to heal your brain after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com. Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.